What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 129 of the Nest Podcast. I'm your boy Brandon, joined as always by my co-host Zach. Zach, what's up?
How's it going?
It's going, man. We just finished up championship weekend and all that good stuff. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But as I was preparing the episode tonight and going through all my notes and all that stuff, it dawned on me. Tomorrow is actually the 1-year anniversary of Kobe Bryant's death. Can you believe that it's already been a year since we lost Kobe?
Yeah, that was a crazy event. Right when that news broke, a lot of people kind of thought it was fake. People didn't know what to think, and then obviously the truth did come out. And man, that was just such a weird moment. And it almost seems like that was like the start of the downfall of 2020.
Yeah, you're right. That kicked off 2020, and then shortly after or around the same time, we were all learning about the coronavirus and things of that nature. And then it snowballed from there. My wife was recently listening to an interview in Italian, and she's been learning Italian. So she's been watching more Italian movies and listening to Italian interviews and music and stuff like that. And I'd happen to look over and see her phone, and I was like, man, that guy looks a lot like Kobe Bryant. And she goes, oh, it is Kobe. He's fluent in Italian.
Wow.
I had no clue. Apparently he grew up in Italy as a kid, and he was fluent in Italian, fluent in Spanish. And I think she also said that he spoke Chinese. So dude was very well versed and very well educated. Not bad for a kid that went straight to the NBA out of high school.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Generational talent that guy was, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. This past Saturday, we both got to tune in and watch UFC 257. And I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit before we get into the football as well. UFC 257 emanated from Abu Dhabi at Fight Island there. It had all the hype that money could buy going into it because, anytime Conor McGregor is fighting, it's at this point must-see TV for MMA fans at least. But is it really? Is Conor really worth the must-see TV moniker these days?
I mean, if you judge it by his performance on Saturday, I would say no. And I mean, 2020 as a whole was just an off year for him anyway. Sure, he beat Cowboy, but that wasn't much of a fight. And then he was just absolutely, stagnant the whole year. He didn't do anything, which I guess I understand. COVID is weird and he's got kids. So I would imagine he didn't want to do much. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely loaded, so he doesn't have to go out there and grind like a lot of these guys do. But I don't really think that he's the big main event draw that he was when he was on the come up anymore. We've seen that he's kind of a one-dimensional fighter. He wants to stay on his feet and bang. If you can outbox him, you can beat him. Dustin Poirier showed us that. If you can get him on the ground, you can tap him out. Nate Diaz and Habib have showed us that. So is he really all that? I just don't think he is. I mentioned Poirier. He got the TKO in the second round. I'm glad that he accepted this as a real fight and it wasn't an exhibition for charity like it was originally hyped to be. And now you got to think that Dustin Poirier has put himself in line to be next up for the title.
Yeah. I think that's only fair. And he was a huge underdog in this and put Conor in his place. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. He's extremely one-dimensional. And honestly, what it seems like to me is that Conor is just a flash in the pan. He came onto the stage, lit the world on fire, and did his little predictions that he was successful at for a few fights. He was the first fighter to be a 2-belt champion at the same time, which was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of went off and did his thing with Floyd and made all that money. And with his losses to Khabib, that really shows what he is. I mean, sure, he's a mixed martial artist, but I think he's a very one-dimensional MMA fighter. And you said it, he wants to stand there and hit you with his left when you're not expecting it. And if that doesn't work, I mean, he does that weird shoulder strike now too, which, I mean, I guess that was effective against Cowboy, but whatever. But he doesn't have like a ground game. He doesn't have jujitsu or anything like that as much as the other guys do. I mean, Poirier is a black belt in jujitsu, and that's basically the gold standard now for MMA fighters. You need to be, well versed in a lot of different things to be a champion now. I don't think Conor is, and I don't know where he's going to go from here, but it's damn sure not for a championship fight. So I don't know. I've been saying for a while now that he needs to just go into boxing because I think that's where he would shine. For his first professional fight to be against Floyd Mayweather says a lot. So I don't know. I doubt he'll do that, but I don't know.
Maybe he'll go fight Jake Paul now. We mentioned Habib quite a bit in the opening here. Speaking of, Michael Chandler made his UFC debut, won in emphatic fashion, getting the TKO on Dan Hooker, and then he instantly went and called out the champ. Yeah. What did you make of that? I thought that was a little bit over the top for a guy that was just, making his UFC debut, really exposing himself to the UFC fans. Is he trying to step into that heel Conor role?
Yeah, I think that's just like almost mainstream now is UFC fighters go out there, beat people, and then just immediately start calling out champions and people that other people know. I don't know what it is, but it's just that the culture has shifted to that. Probably thanks in part a lot to Conor. Mm-hmm. And that's just the thing that they do now. They beat somebody and then they just start calling people out. I don't know.
Yeah. Juliana Pena, she won her fight against Sarah McMahon on the undercard with a 3rd round submission. And she instantly went and called out champ Amanda Nunes after her fight. And, she accused Amanda of ducking her and avoiding trying to fight her and all this stuff. I think that she's just doing the same thing, just trying to get her name in the headlines, trying to get talked about on the Nest podcast and any other, smaller podcast or talking head show that's out there. And I guess it worked because here we are talking about her. But Pena is 2-2 in her last 4 fights. She has, obviously 2 wins, but her 2 losses are against Germaine de Randamie and Valentina Shevchenko. Both are contenders in those divisions. And Nunes, on the other hand, is a 2-division champ, and she beat de Randamie in 2019, and she beat Shevchenko in 2017. So I don't know where Pena gets off thinking that she deserves the next shot.
Yeah. I don't get that either. Fighters want to win a couple and then go for the championship. I don't get that. And you saw that too with Francis Ngannou. He kind of made a name for himself by being this gigantic guy who could knock people out. Wanted a championship fight. They decided to give it to him. And he was taught a lesson that, hey, there's more to this game than just punching people in the face. It's just what people do now, I guess. But that's not going to work. First of all, I don't even think that Amanda would even entertain that kind of fight. And second of all, even if she were to take that fight with Pena, she'd beat the brakes off of her.
Yeah. What is it you said about Ngannou? He has refrigerators for hands.
Yeah, I stole that from somebody. I think it might have been Brendan Schaub, but I just love that.
That's hilarious. One more thing real quick. I'm pleased to announce that this show is once again fueled by Dr. Enough.
The green screen makes it look like you're drinking an invisible glass thing.
Yeah, it does kind of. It's like a cup of Dr. Enough instead of.
Longtime unofficial sponsor of the podcast who, if anybody out there has any ties to Dr. Enough, send them our information.
Because we've plugged them numerous times on our show. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. Zach, AFC, NFC championship games just took place this weekend. The Bucs got to go up to Green Bay and fire the cannons. It wasn't pretty, but the Brady Bucs got the job done. What can you say? Tom Brady going to his 10th Super Bowl. He has now tied Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers with the amount of NFC championship wins in his first attempt. Did he definitively put the GOAT conversation to rest with this one? Can all the Aaron Rodgers naysayers finally just admit that Tom Brady is the best quarterback to do it?
Yeah, I mean, this was the true test. Can he be without Bill Belichick? Can he be without that system that he's supposedly, reliant on? And can he win? And honestly, at the beginning of the season, when he was throwing like 3-4 interceptions in games, I was like, "Oh boy, this is not great." And then he just turned it on, and he flipped a switch, and he is a completely different person whenever it's playoffs and whenever it means something. He's absolutely just one of the best to ever do it.
But Zach, to that point, he threw exactly 3 interceptions in this game,
which is so funny because apparently that didn't matter at all.
The Bucks defense won this game at just as much as Tom Brady did. He honestly, in the first half, he went out there and he looked more like a 33-year-old man. He had like 200 yards passing, a couple touchdowns or whatever in the first half. But then in the second half, he was really showing his age, because that's when a lot of the mistakes were happening. A lot of those interceptions probably weren't his fault. Mike Evans had a lot of balls bounce off his hands and into the hands of a waiting defender. So I'm sure that's a source of frustration for Brady, especially when they could have ran the score up on Green Bay had it not been for that. But for what it's worth, the Bucks defense was able to pretty much shut down one of the best offenses in football this year.
And I don't think anyone could have predicted that. I mean, like I said last week, if the Rams couldn't do it, how were the Bucks supposed to be able to do it? And I guess they did. I don't know if it was that or if it was just the Packers offense wasn't firing on all cylinders that night or what. But yeah, that was a huge surprise. I am absolutely shocked that Aaron Rodgers didn't do better than he did.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the Packers defense just let them down a lot. That 39-yard touchdown completion with like a second left before halftime, that completely killed any hope of momentum that the Packers were trying to cling to. It put the Bucks up 21-10 going into halftime. They never looked back from that. Yeah. And it is what it is. After the game, Aaron Rodgers was pretty candid talking to the reporters. I don't know if you saw any of this, but they had a lot of questions. And he said that he wasn't sure if anyone, including himself, would be back next year. I don't know if maybe that's him saying, some kind of subtle way of saying that he wants out of Green Bay, or if that was a veiled shot at the GM there in Green Bay, because who knows what they're going to do in the draft. Maybe they'll pick another quarterback in the first round. Who the hell knows with them. But is this the last we've seen of Aaron? And if it is, where does he go?
Yeah, that's a huge question mark, because they had an absolutely amazing year. And clearly Davante Adams is one of his favorite targets.
I've said it before, and I'll say it right now. Aaron Rodgers might be the MVP of the league, but Davante Adams is the most valuable Packer.
Yeah. And I don't know if Aaron would want to go off to some new place and not have that weapon that makes him that much better. We've seen what Aaron is like whenever he doesn't have much to go with. After Jordy Nelson left and he was left with Randall Cobb, they didn't do a whole lot. I mean, sure, they were still competitive, but they weren't at this level. This is a whole different Packers team. And I would understand his saltiness towards that organization. They've never given him weapons in draft picks. They've always just kind of done whatever. And I don't know. I can't say for sure if this is the last we've seen of him or not, because I think I would think that he's pretty comfortable there. I mean, they basically got rid of Mike McCarthy because Aaron Rodgers didn't like him or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know what it kind of all depends on what they do this offseason, I think. But like you said, where would he go? I don't have a clue. I'm sure there's not a team out there that wouldn't want him, but
yeah, absolutely. I know a team up in the New England portion of the world that wouldn't mind having Aaron Rodgers come and sling the ball. And, talking about Davante, any kind of a rebuild that the Packers are planning on doing, it has to start with number 17. That's a guy that you don't get rid of no matter what. It would be the same thing as like the Texans giving up on D-Hop and trading him for peanuts.
Right. You would never do that.
You never do that. So, we also talk about the curse of the MVP quite a bit on our show, because every year we bring it up. There hasn't been an MVP win the Super Bowl in the same season since Kurt Warner did it in 1999. So if Rodgers is in fact the MVP, like most of us think that he should be and probably will be, then the curse claims yet another victim.
Yep. Yeah, that curse is real. I mean, that is a crazy stat. Another thing that was interesting about that game is the decision to go for a field goal instead of to go for it. And I think that really was the big decision that kind of screwed them in the end.
Down 8 points with 3 minutes to go. You've got Aaron freaking Rodgers, and you're going to pull him from the game and kick a field goal and hope that you can get the ball back and hope that you can then go and score.
Yeah.
No, you go right then and there with the game on the line. You either get it and you tie the game at 8 because you go for 2, or you lose the game right there. But you die on that shield. You don't kick it.
Yeah, I completely agree. The most dangerous thing that you can do is give Tom Brady the ball with 2 minutes left.
With any time left on the clock. But
seriously, yeah.
And all he had to do was run out the clock. He didn't have to score. He was already ahead. So terrible, terrible play call. Whoever made that call probably deserves to get fired.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a tough call. And I wonder what would have happened if they would have gone for it instead. Would we be saying that the Packers are going to the Super Bowl instead? They never even gave him a chance. They never gave Aaron a chance to give them that chance to win it. And that was just an insane call to me.
And I'm sure Aaron Rodgers feels the same way. And I'm sure Aaron Rodgers has got that in the back of his mind when he was making that statement. Don't even know anybody's future, including himself.
Right.
So the Chiefs buried the Bills. This was a game that we thought, at least I thought, that the Bills were going to be the better team. We thought all along that if anybody in the AFC was going to stop the Chiefs, that it was going to be the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills had the defense and the offense to be able to contain and keep up with the Chiefs. Boy, were we wrong. It started out looking pretty good. The Bills got an opening drive field goal, and then they got the ball back, scored a touchdown. They were up 9-0. And then, I even remember texting you and said, hey, Bills fans shouldn't get too excited just yet. It's only 9 points. And then the Chiefs went on a 21-0 run, and they never looked back from there. What did you see was the biggest weakness that the Bills had in this game?
That defense that we've talked about just wasn't there. I guess they didn't have an answer for Patrick Mahomes and all those weapons, but it's almost like they just didn't show up. I don't know what the case was. They weren't that same defense that they have been. And I mean, Josh Allen wasn't great either, but I don't know. I don't know what the main thing was, but the thing that jumps out at me initially is that defense just wasn't able to do what they normally do. And it's not like the Chiefs have been just absolutely beating teams by 10, 20 points this entire season. They've been winning games by like 3 points.
Yep.
So
that's absolutely true. To me, the clearest weakness that the Bills had on Sunday night was the fact that they could not run the ball. And we've been saying for a while now that if Singletary needs to get going, they need to get Singletary plugged into this offense more and get him going. He only had 6 touches the entire game. And I think he only had like 17, 20, somewhere in there yards. Like he was stopped at the line every time he touched the ball. In total, the Bills only had 41 rushing yards from running backs. That's not going to get it done.
No.
Josh Allen scrambled for 88 yards. He had a long rush of 18, which was more than any other Bills rushers total. No. So yeah, Singletary had 17 yards total. Allen had 18 on one play, and he had 88 to lead all rushers. That ain't going to cut it.
Mm-mm.
On the flip side, the Chiefs ran the ball effectively. They got Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, who scored a touchdown from the goal line. He didn't have a lot of touches, but when he did, he made it count for that one touchdown run. And Darrell Williams carried the bulk of the load with 52 yards. McCole Hardman had 50 yards rushing, and they controlled the clock by sprinkling in these rushes throughout the game. But it was the Chiefs' passing attack that really sealed the deal. They picked apart the Bills' defense, to your point, but they really only did it with two players. Between Tyreek Hill's 172 yards receiving and Kelsey's 118 yards receiving, they made up 290 total yards receiving of the 325 total that Mahomes threw for.
Jeez.
That means only 35 yards passing went to players not named Hill or Kelsey.
Man.
They couldn't stop those two people, and that was the biggest key, was they could not stop Tyreek or they could not stop Kelsey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that makes sense. That's the dangers of having all those great players on that Chiefs offense. There's no way that you can cover both effectively enough to not leave that other player wide open. So yeah, that was a case in point to say that Chiefs offense is one of the best. Sure, Mahomes is talented, and a lot of people, for whatever reason, say that Mahomes is the absolute deciding factor as to why that team is doing so well. I think you can plug in a lot of quarterbacks into that offense, and they'll do just as well.
Yeah, to that point, Mahomes was relatively ineffective with his scrambling and his run game that he normally is really good at. He only had 5 yards rushing at the end of the game, so it's not like he was, getting out of the pocket and making things happen. He was literally dropping back and just throwing the ball to Kelsey or throwing the ball to Hill, and they were making the plays on the ball. So, yeah, I agree. You could pretty much plug anybody in there, and they are going to do a decent job because they have so many weapons. It's just that, the Bills weren't able to stop those two players.
Yep.
I wonder if the injury that Mahomes suffered in the Browns game the week prior had anything to do with the play calls, to just throw it up to those guys, to limit the amount of scrambles that he had, or if he just really wasn't feeling it.
I could see that being the case. I could see them, kind of wanting to protect him a little bit and let him deal with whatever injury that he has. It's definitely a safe bet to keep him from scrambling as much as possible. Obviously, that's how quarterbacks get hurt, is when they go out and scramble, and then a big defender comes and knocks their socks off. So I could definitely see that was part of the game plan. And I think they decided Mahomes is going to pass, and when we can't pass, we're going to run it. And hopefully our running backs can do well, and they damn sure did.
They did. Yeah, they were able to run. Anytime you play the Chiefs, you have to respect the pass so much that it should, in theory, leave the run game wide open. Which is why I thought Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going to be such a good draft pick in fantasy, because everything was going to be set up for him to run, and he's the kind of running back that he can put a team on his back and just run with them. But the Chiefs never really utilized it all season long, and now in the playoffs, it seems like they're starting to get a feel for the run game a little bit more.
Right.
How much do you love the Bills Mafia, though? The Bills fans. It was reported that hundreds of Bills fans waited at the airport at 3 a.m. for the team to come home, and they cheered them on like they just won the Super Bowl. The Bills Mafia also donated thousands of dollars to Lamar Jackson's charity the week before. This is a fan base that is starting to endear itself with fans from around the league.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is one of those fan bases that doesn't have a lot of bandwagon fans. There's not very many Bills fans out there in other parts of the country that aren't Buffalo, and their loyalty, man, is obviously pretty unmatched. They're probably one of the top, most loyal fan bases. I mean, they have not had a whole lot to be excited about until now. And like you said, I mean, they support their team in good times and bad times. So that was cool.
Yeah. I fully expect the Bills to be back next year. You talked about they haven't had much to be excited about. This team is one to be excited about. They're good. And I think they'll be back next year, and I think they'll be hungrier than ever. Stephon Diggs made a huge improvement to that team. And after the game, he stood there and watched the Chiefs celebrate by himself. He stood on the sidelines and just watched the whole celebration. That's that kind of energy that we talked about Kobe at the top of the show. That's that Mamba mentality where you lose and you take it all in and you feed off of that and you make sure that you damn well aren't going to be standing on the sidelines watching somebody else celebrate next year.
Yep.
So the Bills will be back hungry.
For sure.
Let's talk a little bit about Tony Romo for a moment. Of course he's in the press booth and he's up there and he's this kind of guy that it seems like he gets to watch the game 30 seconds before the rest of us do, because he'll see something pre-snap and say, oh, they're about to throw the ball to the tight end here, or they're about to move the tight end and do this. And then it happens. It's like, how can you see it, but nobody else can? I think he's got like a fast forward rewind button on life. But after the game, Tony Romo said that the Patriots will be back in the AFC Championship next year, which I thought was very interesting. I thought at first maybe he was making a mistake saying the Patriots instead of the Bills, but then he doubled down and said that Bill Belichick, with all that cap space that he has, will be able to build his team back into a winning organization in 1 year's time. Do you think old Bill will be able to build a winner that fast?
That's a tall order. 1 year is a bit much. I mean, if anybody can do it, it's Bill Belichick, but I wouldn't necessarily put all my chips in that basket. I'd say maybe 2-3 years. Yeah, they definitely have a good shot. I think this first year they're going to go out and get a quarterback and maybe some pieces around that and try to get that going. But I think it's going to take a little bit more than a year for them to be back.
I mean, Tony Romo can see the future. So if he says it, I'm buying it. Yeah. And, we'll see what happens. But I definitely can see Bill putting together at least a winning product. The Patriots were impacted harder than any other team in the league by COVID opt-outs. They had 8 starters opt out for the COVID thing. So they'll get them back. Plus they've got the 15th overall draft pick where they could get one of these stud wide receivers coming out of college. I saw a mock draft today that had the Heisman winner Smith going to the Patriots at 15, which would be very interesting considering the quarterback carousel that currently could be happening in the NFL. You've got guys like Aaron Rodgers that could potentially be on the move, Deshaun Watson that wants to move, Matt Stafford that said to be moving. We've got a lot of guys that could be coming and going. And, then you've also got to consider draft picks and things of that nature that are going to be flooding into the NFL. So if the Patriots can get one of these stellar wide receivers and get a trade or a free agent quarterback that's a veteran in the league, imagine Matt Stafford throwing the ball to DeAndre Smith.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
I'm for it. I am for it right now. Let's make it happen. Bill, if you're watching, and I know you are because you're a big fan, make that happen. You would make me very happy.
Yep.
But let's talk about the Super Bandwagon Bowl. This is 2 teams that are going to be playing in the Super Bandwagon Bowl that have seen more fans join their teams in the past year to 2 years than arguably any other team across the NFL. Of course, the Chiefs they've always had a good fan base, but in recent years, they've had more and more and more people start to cling to them as they start having a winning product. 2 years ago, when Patrick Mahomes won the MVP, that's when you started hearing the rumblings of, oh, Chiefs Nation, baby, Chiefs Nation, we're getting there, blah, blah, blah. And then they won the Super Bowl, and then now they're back in the Super Bowl. So they've got full-on bandwagon mode. You've got people that were wearing Steelers shirts last year are now wearing Chiefs shirts. You've got people that hated the Chiefs 2 years ago. Now all of a sudden they're wearing a Patrick Mahomes jersey. This is one of the biggest bandwagon teams in the league right now. And then you've got the Tampa Bay Gronkaneers that basically whenever Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and all of those cats decided to move down to Florida, they took a lot of fans from the New England Patriots with them. They weren't real New England Patriot fans. Those, in fact, were Tom Brady fans. And Tom Brady's kind of got the whole LeBron James-esque fan base following to where they're going to follow him to whatever team that he decides to go to and build into a super team. that's what we're seeing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now, is that they've got the LeBron James crowd. Welcome to the Super Bandwagon Bowl.
Yeah, that's spot on, especially for the Bucks. That's a team that, I mean, they've been absolute crap for a while, so that means that not many people are fans. And as pretty much as soon as Tom Brady rolled into town, they were saying, "Oh, we're going all the way," blah 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 blah. That is absolutely one of the big bandwagon teams, and I think the Chiefs are up there too. But I mean, honestly, like you said, Tom has that LeBron James effect. Guys who had Cavs jerseys went and got themselves a Heat jersey, went and got themselves another Cav jersey, and now they've bought themselves a Lakers jersey. I think the same is for those Tom Brady fans. They've got probably a couple Patriots jerseys, and now they've got themselves a Buccaneers jersey.
Yep. I've seen pictures floating around on the internet of people wearing half Patriots, half Tampa Bay jerseys with Brady on the back. It's like, what? Like you can't do both. He never played for both teams at the same time, so that certainly doesn't make sense. Like I've seen those split jerseys whenever it's like a mom and dad in the crowd and they've got a kid that plays on both teams. All right, fine, that's cool, whatever. You're cheering for both of your kids, but you're just a fan of Tom Brady, so you're going to rep both of his jerseys. Get out of here.
Yeah. Do you remember Tiki Barber and his twin? I can't remember his name.
Rondé Barber.
Their parents used to have a jersey that was like that, and it was half Giants and half Bucks, right? That's who one of them played for.
Yeah.
And that makes total sense. I mean, they're literally twins that are playing football on opposite teams. Makes total sense to me. But for somebody to have a jersey that's half Patriots and half Bucks, clearly you're not a fan of both of those teams. You're a fan of Tom Brady, which I guess there's nothing wrong with, but it's weird for people to say I'm a Patriots fan until Tom Brady's not there anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Corey Cook said the same thing happened when Montana came to KC. I can see that. Montana was another one of those guys that had a big following, a big fan base when he was in San Francisco. And then anywhere that he went, he was going to bring some of those fans with him. Yeah, it is what it is. Superstars are going to have their fans that I guess supersedes the team. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But the Bucks officially will be the first home team to ever host a Super Bowl, which that's kind of cool. I don't know if that played any part in Tom Brady deciding to go to Tampa, because if that did, then he called his shot in year one, and that's pretty impressive. Yeah. But I don't think we should get too deep into the pregame analysis because, one, we've got 2 weeks until the Super Bowl. I'm sure every other talk show out there is going to be talking about this nonstop for the next 2 weeks. So we don't really need to start beating that drum yet. Plus, we've got to have some content for next week too. But who do you think will ultimately walk away the winner?
God, this is such a hard pick because Tom has lost before. Mm-hmm. And Tom has also just absolutely turned it on to another level in Super Bowls. It's hard to go against the GOAT, but I think if there's any team that can do it, it's this absolutely stacked Chiefs offensive team. I don't know if the Buccaneers have enough to stop this Chiefs offense. They did apparently have enough to stop Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, but I've been saying for a while that offense was a little one-dimensional, and somehow they were just able to make it work. I don't know if you can keep up with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and if they have a good run game again, that's going to be very tough to cover all of those bases. And plus, if Mahomes is good to go, he'll have basically 2 weeks to recover and stuff. So if he's completely good to go and he wants to scramble around and run around and throw the ball all he wants, Tom's going to have keep up with that offense. And I think you might be able to see a 40, 50-point game here. So. Wow. I think it's going to be just whoever scores the most. I don't think the defense is going to be a factor much.
So whoever scores the most is going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, wow. Crazy concept, but that's what I have to say.
That's what we do here at the Nest Podcast. We deliver the true facts and the expert analysis, and that that was spot on. No, but I mean, I get what you're saying. you're calling for a shootout, and basically the defenses will be rendered irrelevant because it's just going to be two quarterbacks imposing their will and doing essentially whatever they want to do. And I could see that this has the potential for that. Watch the final score be like 13-14 or something like that. that's the way it'll end up. But you know, did you pick a winner in all that? Did you say who you think is actually going to come out on top?
It's going to be so hard for me to pick. God, I just don't know. It literally could go either way. I mean, if that offense if that Chiefs offense wants to go out and do their thing, how are you going to stop that? And then at the same exact time, Tom's been here 9,000 times. He knows exactly what to do. And if his freaking receivers can catch his passes, they are just scoring all day. So I wonder if I kind of want to say Chiefs because they have it a little bit more on lock. Like their players are just, without question. I think Tom's little super team that he's got isn't so super. Mike Evans has been dropping passes. Chris Godwin has been dropping passes. Gronk is just, he's just there. He's not really a factor like he used to be. Their running backs are meh. So Tom basically has to win this game. And I wonder if that's a harder feat than the Chiefs offense just continuing to do what they do. So I think I'm going to say the Chiefs.
Okay. Yeah, as much as I hate to admit it, because I really don't like the Chiefs, I think you're probably right. I think the Chiefs probably do go back-to-back, and it makes them the first team to go back-to-back since Tom Brady and the New England Patriots did it. So that would be another little, I guess, idiosyncrasy about this whole Super Bowl, because I also see it as kind of the official Tom Brady passing the torch game. We've seen a few games here and there where it's like, oh, this was kind of like a passing of the torch, but there's no stage in football bigger than the Super Bandwagon Bowl, and this is going to be the time when Tom Brady definitively passes the torch off to young Patrick Mahomes as the best quarterback in the game.
Right. Yeah, I could definitely see it like a changing of the guard here. I don't know. It's going to be a crazy one. I hope it's a crazy one. I hope it's not just a crappy game. Man, but I got to think also too. I wonder if getting one more is the only thing that's stopping Tom from retiring. He wants one more. He did that Tom versus time Facebook thing maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, he told his son, one more Super Bowl and I'll retire. And maybe that's the only thing that's keeping him around. I have no idea.
Didn't they win one more after that came out though?
I can't remember when it came out.
I feel like the Patriots won another one after that one came out, but I may be wrong. Noted today that several big name companies won't be appearing at the Super Bowl donning their new commercials. That's one thing that a lot of people look forward to with the Super Bowl is of course, the Super Bowl halftime show and then the Super Bowl commercials. That gets its own blog post. It gets, people talking about it at work the next day and everything like that. But three big companies that usually go all out have bowed out. That's Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and Budweiser. None of them will have Super Bowl commercials. Apparently Bud Light will still have a Super Bowl commercial, but Budweiser will not. So,
wow. Did they say why at all?
I know for Budweiser, they said that it has something to do with their reallocating the money that normally is spent on Super Bowl ads to fund COVID-19 something or another. To me, that just says that they lost a lot of money in 2020 and they're reallocating that money to their pockets that they lost to COVID-19 and not being open in bars all across the country. But it is what it is. And apparently CBS is charging $5.5 million for a 30-second ad. That would make me kind of not want to go out there and promote. Hell, everybody knows who Budweiser is anyway. You don't need to spend that much money to tell people your company name.
Yeah, I always thought that was a weird thing anyway. Like, you're going to spend millions and millions of dollars on this commercial. And a lot of them were cool. But what did it gain you? Like, who the hell in America doesn't know about Budweiser?
No. I mean, I guess, the best thing that they have going for them with these commercials is when people talk about them the next day and people are like, oh, did you see the commercial with the funny frogs or whatever? Because those frogs took over for years.
Oh yeah,
You
that's
know,
one of the most legendary Super Bowl commercials ever.
absolutely. Everybody our age, older, some even younger, they know the Budweiser.
Mm-hmm.
They know that those frogs, and it's all because of that ad that aired during the Super Bowl when all eyes are on their TV sets.
Yeah, sure. That's weird. And Coca-Cola is another big one that they used
Mhm.
a real big commercial. And again, that's a company who everyone knows about, and they probably need zero advertising to get their brand out there. Maybe they're kind of straying away from this huge advertising stuff, and maybe COVID was the catalyst for that. You can basically post whatever you want on YouTube or wherever, and if it's good enough, it may go viral, and then you basically have free advertising. You don't need to pay CBS $5 million for 30 seconds. You can do whatever the hell you want on YouTube.
And to that point, those companies are releasing some sort of online video to coincide with the Super Bowl, but it's just not going to be aired on the Super Bowl broadcast. So that is interesting that they are still doing that, and they're doing exactly what you talked about, trying to get that free advertisement, hoping for likes and shares and all that stuff. So
yeah, I think for companies that are maybe newer or smaller, it's a smart move if you can afford it to throw up some crazy Super Bowl commercial. You remember the Monster commercials back in the day for Monster.com?
Oh yeah,
that was kind of a big one that maybe people didn't really know that they were a company, and I would assume got them some views on their sites and stuff. But for huge companies like that, if they were to come to me and ask, hey, where should we spend $5 million? I don't know if it would be on a 30-second ad for the Super Bowl.
no, it'd probably be to bring us on as their official spokespeople and do play-by-play analysis and recaps and stuff like that for them.
That would be a great use of funds, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll split it 2.5 mil each. We'll be good with that, and let's make that happen.
Yep, I'm down.
News broke today in Major League Baseball that the MLB Players Association has turned down the latest MLB proposal for the universal DH and expanded playoff format. The union stance has always been that it didn't want to talk about a trade to implement the DH, which only benefits a small group of players, in return for the expanded playoffs. I don't know what their sticking point is on that, because to me, both of those things are what the fans want. And if you're trying to grow the sport like we talked about last week, then why wouldn't you want to do things that the fans actually like? It was pretty universal whenever COVID happened and they implemented the universal DH in both leagues. Fans responded positively to it. Yeah, you've got some fans that were like, oh, I like the traditional way. I like the strategy of having a pitcher in there or whatever. But for the most part, everybody really enjoyed the universal DH and the expanded playoffs that opens it up so that more teams make the playoffs. More teams have a chance to win the World Series. More teams get those postseason dollars for advertisements and all that stuff. It's a win-win.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I wonder if the union wants a piece of the pie and they don't want to give the owners this without getting something in return. Maybe they want more revenue from these playoff games, because I mean that's obviously probably one of the main motivators for the owners to do expanded playoffs is they get a lot more views, they get a lot more airtime, they get to sell those playoff tickets, and maybe the players want a bigger chunk of that or whatever. I mean, I guess $10 million a year or whatever isn't enough for these kids. So
yeah, that's a good point. Money does kind of make everything go around. Cash rules everything around me, and it certainly does in sports. And these guys, they pay to play, and they want to get paid well for what they do. And if they make the playoffs and they're bringing in a lot of money, because next season we should also have fans in the stands, so that's even more money that'll be rolling in. More playoff games with more playoff fans. That's a lot of money that the owners could be potentially pocketing if they're not sharing it with the teams.
Sure.
The Red Sox are finally starting to make some moves. That's been exciting for me. I've been sitting watching the Twitter pretty much every day, like, come on, do something. I feel like that stick figure with the stick poking Heim Bloom, like, come on, dude, do something. You're supposed to be building a team here, and you're letting all the free agents go somewhere else. But they signed Kiki Hernandez from the Dodgers. He was free agent signing. They filled him in at the second base, I guess, is where he'll be, or he'll be a super sub, kind of like Brock Holt, and fill in wherever he needs to play for the day. And it was announced today that the Red Sox and the Yankees completed a trade to send a relief pitcher, Adam Ottavino, to Boston, along with the 24th ranked prospect, in exchange for a player to be named later or cash. So to me, it looks like the Yankees are trying to shed some salary to get under a threshold or whatever it is that they're doing. But it does fill a need for the Sox in the bullpen, and it does help beef up the farm system. So I think actually this was a pretty good trade on both accounts. Did you hear anything about these?
Yeah, I heard that they picked up Kike, and as far as I can tell, he was basically a utility player for the Dodgers. He played basically anywhere in the infield that they needed him, and it seems like a solid pickup. He's obviously not one of those guys that's gonna just absolutely change your team, but it's definitely a solid pickup, and they didn't have to give up a whole lot for it.
Yeah, the good thing about Hernandez is he hits left-handed pitching pretty well, so that'll be pretty big having him in the lineup to face lefties. And like you said, he's kind of a super sub. He can play anywhere. That he can play short if Xander needs a night off. He can fill in at second, but he's never been that guy that's an everyday ball player. So if he's made into an everyday second baseman or plays his way to be an everyday second baseman, it'll be interesting to see how he develops and how he responds to playing 140 games a season or whatever it is.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
I'm excited for it. There's still some big names floating around on the free agent market, though. Most notably Trevor Bauer is still out there. I guess recently he's been linked to rumors of possibly going to the Dodgers, possibly going to the Angels. I don't know. We'll see where he ends up landing. Ultimately, he's going to get a pretty good deal wherever he goes. I don't know if it's going to be exactly what he's looking for, because it sounds like he wants pretty much to get half of the organization for 1 year of his service, but it is what it is. We'll see where he ends up, and I'm sure wherever he does end up, he'll do pretty well. But like you and Brad were talking about a couple weeks ago, a 60-game season isn't really enough to want to pay a guy $40 million.
Right. And he's only going to be able to play for you every 5 days. He's great at what he does. Sure. But yeah. If I were a GM or whatever, I'd maybe give him 10 million, 15 million, maybe, if I could spend that much money and be okay. But God, he just wants the world and everything in it. And good for him for trying. It's great to see a player get the most that he can for his talents, but I don't know if you're going to be given that much.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think he definitely will get more than 15, probably more than 20 million. We've got pitchers out there that are making 30 plus million, and Bauer is right there in line to be that next guy to get paid with that amount. But it's finding a team that's willing to do that. And coming off of the shortened, weird COVID season, I don't think it's the best time for it to be a free agent. So maybe he does have to take a $25 million for a single season and go out there and prove that he can do that in a 162 game season instead of just being great for 60 games. Because like you said, he only pitches every 5. So 60 divided by 5 is a significantly less amount of starts than you would make in a regular season. Absolutely. You're talking 12 compared to 30 plus starts. That's a lot.
Yeah. And you got to think he was playing in the NL Central, which does not have the greatest hitters in the league. So he had a bit of an easier time than some other pitchers. He was obviously still able to do great. But yeah, 25 million is sky high for that kid. I think there is a team out there that will give him that, but man, I wonder if they'll regret it at this time next year.
Well, and to your point, Zach, yes, he does play in the NL Central, which is a more of a down league, but he also in 2020 primarily played against AL Central foes as well, because they stayed pretty close to home for the most part. So they had the Tigers and the Twins and the Indians, all the Royals, all teams that aren't necessarily hitting the cover off the ball.
Right.
So he did have a pretty favorable schedule. It would be interesting to look at some of the other pitchers from that division and see how they stacked up to Bauer's numbers, or if he really was just that good.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing. From what I can remember, obviously he was basically lights out. But yeah, I don't know. And honestly, I think he's probably the best pitcher in that central area. You know, him and I guess Yu Darvish used to be in that.
Flaherty is up there.
Yeah, sure. And I would say he's probably at the top of that heap, but there's probably guys that are pretty close up there to him. So
yeah, we'd have to go and do a deep dive and look at some of those numbers to figure that out. But last thing that I wanted to cover is, we kicked off the show tonight and we talked a little bit about the passing of Kobe Bryant and how we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Kobe's death. But this week we also learned about the passing of one of the all-time MLB greats, MLB Hall of Famer and former home run king, Hank Aaron. I know neither one of us really got a chance to watch Hank Aaron play whenever he was active or whatever, but I know I've seen the clip a million times of when he finally broke Babe Ruth's record and he was rounding the bases and the fans jumped out onto the field and were running beside him as he was rounding third base. That's a memorable moment in baseball history, and being the guy that said, "Move on over, Babe. There's a new home run king." Hank Aaron is the man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can only imagine the terrible things that he had to endure. He used to get like letters and phone calls, I would imagine, from people saying, "You better not ever try to surpass Babe Ruth and this and that and the other. How dare you try to take over," or whatever. And I'm sure it was a lot of racist stuff too. But during that time, for him to do that was, yeah, I'm sure that was very, very, very tough. And like you said, some people really, really enjoyed that. And I think there was a lot of people back then that hated that a black person was doing what he was doing to their idol that was Babe Ruth.
Yep. Hammer and Hank was not only an exceptional baseball player, but he was an outstanding human being. And that's what I think ultimately he'll be remembered for, was his contributions to being just a good person. And that's pretty awesome. Whenever any of us die, that's kind of what I hope is said about me, is he was a good person,
Yeah.
So anyway, do you got anything else you want to talk about tonight?
No, not really. You mentioned the Red Sox are finally doing stuff. Can't say the same for the Cardinals, and I don't think that'll change. It seems like they're just kind of taking this year as a down year or whatever. Honestly, the most that I expect is a re-signing of Yachty. That seems to be pretty likely. I don't think he's gotten any deals from anyone else or any just conversation with any other teams. I'm not sure for Waino, but I think that the move to be made for the Cardinals is to re-sign Yachty. I think that'll make the fan base happy, and that'll just kind of tide us over until we can get Matt Carpenter and what's that outfielder's name? I can't think of it, but there's some guys on the books that are terrible pretty much. And Dexter Fowler, that's what I was thinking of. When those guys get off the books, maybe they'll make some moves, but I fully expect this year to just be play with what you got kind of year. And the NL Central is a cakewalk anyway, so we may or may not make a wild card spot. And after that, it's probably not looking great. So another year of just kind of barely squeaking into the playoffs. But it is what it is, sometimes that just that happens, and it kind of sucks. But this was this 2020 season was weird for owners in general. Not having those fans is huge, and we've said before, owners are in it to make money and not to spend money. So if they're not making any money, they're not going to spend. And sure, some teams are spending. Obviously, the Mets are spending big money.
Mm-hmm.
The Padres are spending big money, but those are teams that are kind of on the come up. You know, they finally got something going, and they're going to build on that. The Cardinals are a team who've won in the past. You know, it's been maybe 10 years or whatever since our last World Series win, but it's not like they're, you know, just an absolute terrible organization, and they have been terrible for years. This is one of those teams where they can kind of get by on being mediocre because they have those whatever previous wins to fall back on, and the fans aren't going to just be outraged for too long. But I think in about 2 or 3 years, that team, the Cardinals, need to make some big moves and make a push for another World Series.
Yeah. You know, just to give you a little feedback on what you were talking about, the Cardinals have offered Yachty and Waino a deal. I guess it would be a 1-year contract for both, trying to bring them back. Maybe they retire at the end of that one and they retire as a member of the Cardinals. And we've got 21 days until pitchers and catchers report. So we're getting closer and closer to spring training, you know, and as these teams start to show up at their respective spring training complexes, that's whenever all the final free agent acquisitions will start to happen. So in the next coming weeks, we should have quite a bit of baseball news to be talking about, and I'm excited, baby. Yeah. We're almost back. The boys are almost ready to lace them up and get out there on that freshly manicured lawn, and the boys of summer will be here before you know it.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, obviously the Super Bowl is going to be fun to watch, I hope. And then right after that, it's baseball 100 miles an hour. And I'm excited too.
Yeah. And for those of you guys watching, thank you so much. I'll be live on NFL Trash Talk 2021 tomorrow night, and I'm going to do an open mic night. So anybody that wants to come on, I'm going to post a link to actually join the live feed. So you can come on, talk to me, tell me what you think about the Bandwagon Bowl. Tell me what you think about the AFC, the NFC Championship. Tell me what you think about the impending NFL free agency, anything like that. Whatever you want to talk about is what we'll talk about tomorrow night on NFL Trash Talk 2021. And Zach, if you're free, you're more than welcome to hop on and join with me too. So
for sure. Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll try to get some people on there, try to be more interactive, and it'll be a good time. So if you're listening and you don't already follow, go follow the group. Find it on Facebook, NFL Trash Talk 2021. You have to request to join, type in whatever your favorite team is so that if you change your team later on, people will make fun of you for being a bandwagon jumper. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the Bandy Bowl coming up pretty soon. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Nest Podcast. We'll see you back here next week. Same time, same place. Peace.